I want to start by saying that I am, by nature, a calm person. I don't yell, I don't make scenes, I don't flip tables or throw things across rooms. I don't cry in front of people who haven't earned the right to see me cry. I process things quietly, internally, in the organized way that my brain has always worked. The way it worked when I was a kid who color-coded her school notes. The way it worked when I was a college student who kept a spreadsheet of every dollar she spent. The way it has worked every single day of my 15-year career as a certified public accountant. I respond to problems methodically, with documentation, in the correct order. My therapist calls this highly functional emotional regulation. My mother says I got it from my father. My ex-husband used to say, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with frustration, depending on the day, that I never seemed to get emotional about anything. He was wrong about that. I got very emotional about this. I just got emotional about it quietly, privately, alone at my desk at 11 o'clock at night, for 8 months, while I methodically dismantled his financial life piece by piece. Let me start from the beginning, because the beginning matters, not just the discovery, the whole 9 years. Because when you find out something like this, you go back. You can't help it. You go back and you look at every moment differently, and the looking back is its own kind of grief, separate from the grief of the discovery itself. So I'm going to take you back, all the way. Who I am and who he was ****. My name isn't important. What's important is what I do. I am 41 years old. I grew up in the Midwest, the daughter of an accountant father and a schoolteacher mother, in a household where the budget was discussed openly at the dinner table, and every dollar had a known purpose, and the idea of money being hidden or mismanaged was treated with the same seriousness as lying. My father used to say, numbers don't have feelings, but they always tell the truth. I grew up believing that. I went to college on a partial scholarship, worked 2 part-time jobs to cover the rest, graduated with a degree in accounting, and immediately started studying for my CPA exam. I passed on the first attempt. I moved to a mid-sized city in the Midwest for a job at a regional accounting firm, worked there for 8 years, and then moved to my current firm, a firm that specializes in financial fraud investigation. For the past 7 years, I have been a senior forensic accountant. My job, in the simplest possible terms, is to find money that people have tried to hide. I do this for corporations investigating internal theft, for law firms building fraud cases, for regulatory bodies examining financial misconduct. I am very good at it. I have testified as an expert witness in federal court 4 times. I tell you all of this not to brag. I tell you this because it is the context without which the rest of this story makes no sense. Because the rest of this story is about a man who spent 9 years hiding money from a forensic accountant. And I want you to understand, before I tell you how it ended, that this was always going to end exactly the way it ended. His name was Derek. I met Derek at a work event, one of those industry mixer evenings that I typically avoided but had attended because a colleague had specifically asked me to come, and I didn't want to let her down. He was there with a client of his. He was 36 at the time. I was 32. He worked in commercial real estate, brokering large deals between property developers and investors, a world of handshakes and commission checks and long lunches with people who wore expensive watches. He was charming in the way that people in sales are charming, confident, attentive, the kind of person who makes you feel like the most interesting person in the room for the duration of the conversation. He remembered details. He followed up. He was consistent in a way that I found, at 32, genuinely impressive. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on a trip we took together to a lake house with friends, not a grand gesture, just a quiet moment on the dock at sunset, a ring I later found out he had agonized over choosing. I said yes. We got married the following summer in a small ceremony that I planned mostly myself because I had very specific opinions about what I did and didn't want, and Derek was happy to let me have them. 9 years, that's how long we were married. 9 years of shared dinners and shared vacations and shared Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper. 9 years of building something together, or what I believed was together. 9 years of a life that felt, from the inside, largely good. Not perfect, no 9-year marriage is perfect, but solid. Real, built on something. I believed that completely, right up until the moment I didn't. The small things I didn't add up. Here is the thing I have to be honest about, looking back. There were signs, small ones, the kind that individually mean nothing but collectively form a pattern I would have identified immediately in a professional context, and somehow missed entirely in my own home. Derek's income was commission-based, which meant it varied month to month. This was legitimate. Commercial real estate commissions are genuinely unpredictable, tied to deal timelines that can stretch or compress without warning. Some months were very good. Some months were tight. I accepted this as the natural rhythm of his industry. But now, looking back with the clarity of everything I know, I can see that the tightness was manufactured. Certain months where Derek told me money was tight, where we agreed to postpone a purchase, skip a trip, be careful, those were months where his hidden account was receiving deposits. He was telling me we were stretched while quietly redirecting money to a place I didn't know existed. I should have caught it. I have asked myself many times why I didn't, and the honest answer is this: I trusted him. I trusted him the way you trust a person you have built a life with. I was not his forensic accountant. I was his wife. And those two identities, it turned out, were completely different things. He also had a habit, which I attributed to personality, of handling certain financial matters himself. Insurance renewals, some of the investment account communications, the occasional bill I never saw because he took care of it before it reached me. I thought this was him contributing to the household management. It was actually him managing the boundary of what I could and couldn't see. I think about this a lot. The way a person can engineer the blind spots of someone who loves them, using the trust of that love as the engineering material. It is, professionally speaking, a sophisticated form of fraud. Personally speaking, it is a particular kind of cruelty. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The filing cabinet. 8 months ago, on a Tuesday evening in November, I came home from work and went looking for our car insurance documents. There had been a minor fender bender in a parking garage that afternoon. Someone had clipped the rear bumper of my car while I was inside a meeting. Minor damage, no injuries, just the bureaucratic process of filing an insurance claim. I needed the policy documents. I went to the shared filing cabinet in our home office. Derek was in the living room watching television. I could hear it through the wall. I flipped through the folders looking for the insurance tab. I found it, and right behind it, in a manila folder without a label, I found something else. A bank statement, single page, folded in thirds, clearly printed at a branch rather than mailed. The bank name at the top was one we didn't use, had never used as far as I knew. The account holder name was Derek's. The balance, as of 14 months prior, was $112,847. I stood in front of that filing cabinet, and I looked at that number for what was probably 30 seconds, but felt considerably longer. My brain did two things simultaneously. The personal part of it, the wife part, the 9 years of marriage part, went very quiet in the way that things go quiet when something large and unwelcome announces itself. And the professional part of it, the forensic accountant part, the 15 years of following money part, woke up completely, immediately, and started working. I photographed the statement on my phone. I folded it back exactly as I had found it. I replaced it in the folder, in the cabinet, in the exact position it had been in. I closed the cabinet. I picked up the insurance documents. I walked to my home office, and I sat down at my desk. Derek called from the living room asking if I wanted tea. I said yes, please. He brought it. He set it on my desk, asked how my day had been. I said fine. He went back to the television. I sat at my desk with my tea and the insurance documents and the photograph on my phone of a bank statement from an account I didn't know existed. I did not say anything. I opened my laptop. I went to work. The investigation, the first layer. I want to explain what it is actually like to investigate something like this when you do what I do for a living. It is not dramatic. It does not feel like a movie. It feels like work, careful, methodical, one step at a time work, except that the work is sitting in the place in your chest where your normal feelings usually live, which makes it harder and stranger than any professional case I have ever run. You follow the thread. That's all you do. You find the first thread and you follow it, and it leads to another thread, and you follow that one, and you keep going until you have the whole picture. You don't jump ahead. You don't assume. You document everything as you go, because documentation is the only thing that transforms what you know into something you can use. The first thread was the account number on the statement. Using my professional database access, all of which I was fully authorized to use for personal research, I began tracing the account's history. What I found, over the course of the first 3 days, was this. The account had been opened 6 years ago, 3 years into our marriage, at a bank branch on the other side of the city from where we lived or worked, which meant Derek had specifically gone out of his way to open it somewhere I was unlikely to encounter it accidentally. The account had been receiving regular deposits for 6 years. The amounts were carefully sized, never more than $8,000 or $10,000 at a time, usually between $3,000 and $5,000, spaced out irregularly rather than on a fixed schedule. This sizing and spacing is a technique I recognize from professional cases. It is designed to avoid triggering automatic suspicious activity reports, which most financial institutions file for transactions above certain thresholds. Whoever had structured these deposits, Derek, presumably without professional guidance, just with enough general knowledge to be careful, had been cautious. But careful is not the same as invisible, not to me. I cross-referenced the deposit dates against Derek's commission payment history, which I reconstructed using a combination of our joint tax filings, where his total income was reported, and the deposits into our joint account, which showed what he had declared as household income. The gap between what he earned and what he deposited jointly was, over 6 years, significant. He had been skimming his commissions. Not all of them, never enough to make the household finances look obviously wrong, but a consistent portion, month after month, deal after deal, redirected to the account I wasn't supposed to know about. Total redirected over 6 years. I calculated it at approximately $216,000. I wrote that number on a piece of paper, stared at it for a moment, and then locked the paper in my work bag. Then I kept going, because $216,000 in a hidden account is a symptom, and I needed to find the disease. The investigation, the second layer. Where was the money going? I spent the next week and a half on the outflows, and this is the part that I will be honest with you, this is the part that hurt the most, not the numbers, the what the numbers meant. Because finding a hidden bank account is, in a strange way, abstract. It's a financial anomaly. It's a number on a page. You can look at it with some professional distance, at least for a little while. What the outflows showed me was a life. A parallel life, running alongside mine, funded by money that should have been ours. The first major outflow was a recurring rent payment. Monthly, consistent, going back 6 years, to a property management company managing a residential apartment complex approximately 40 minutes from our house. I looked up the complex. Nice building. Good neighborhood. 2-bedroom units running around $1,700 a month. Someone was living there. Someone Derek was paying rent for. The second outflow was a car payment. A vehicle I had never seen, registered to Derek at the address of the apartment complex. A car that had been purchased 4 years ago, financed through a dealership, payments coming out of the hidden account every month. The third category was lifestyle expenses. Restaurants, hotels, weekend trips to cities we had never visited together, charges at places that were clearly designed for 2 people, the kind of dinner reservations, the kind of hotel room upgrades, the kind of purchases that tell a story about how someone is spending their time when they say they are somewhere else. And then the fourth outflow, the one that made me close my laptop and sit in the dark for a while. Regular transfers, monthly, to an external personal account that was not Derek's, $2,000 to $4,000 a month every month for the past 4 years. Someone was receiving money from my husband every month, had been for 4 years, consistent, reliable like a salary. I traced the receiving account as far as I legally could. It took 4 days, using a combination of professional tools and careful research of publicly available information. At the end of those 4 days, I had a name. I will call her Natalie. She was 32 years old. She had a professional LinkedIn profile and a public social media presence that told me she worked in marketing at a local company. She had, based on everything I could see, no obvious reason to be receiving thousands of dollars a month from my husband. Except for the obvious reason. I found the address of the apartment complex, and I drove there one evening after work. I sat in the parking lot in my car with my laptop open and my documentation organized in a folder on the seat beside me, and I looked at the building for about 20 minutes. I thought about the rent payments. 6 years. I thought about the car in the parking lot somewhere in that complex, the car Derek had been making payments on for 4 years. I thought about the monthly transfers. I thought about the restaurants and the hotels and the weekend trips. I thought about 9 years of marriage and variable income, and it's just how the business works, babe. Then I drove home, and I made a casserole for dinner, and Derek asked how my day had been, and I said fine, and we ate dinner and watched television and went to bed. I lay in the dark next to my husband, and I stared at the ceiling and I thought, I am not done yet. I haven't found everything yet. I was right. The investigation, the third layer. It was during my second week of investigation that I found the property. I had been doing a comprehensive search of Derek's name and any associated business entities in the state corporate registry, a standard step in any financial fraud investigation, checking whether a subject has established shell companies or holding entities to obscure assets. Most of the time in my professional work, this search turns up nothing. Sometimes it turns up something interesting. This time, it turned up a limited liability company. The name was generic, the kind of name that is deliberately unmemorable, the kind you'd see in a list of 100 similar entities and immediately forget. Derek's name appeared as the registered agent, buried in the filing details, not in the company name itself. The filing was 3 years old. I looked up the company in the property records. The company owned a condominium unit in a residential building in a nice part of the city. The condo had been purchased 3 years ago for $280,000. There was a mortgage on it with a balance of approximately $180,000. which meant there was roughly $100,000 in equity sitting inside an LLC that Derek had created and never told me about. A condo. My husband owned a condo, had been owning a condo, building equity in it, making mortgage payments on it from his hidden account for 3 years, in the name of a company designed to make it hard to find. I looked up the address. I sat very still for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done at any point in the previous 2 weeks of investigation. I cried. Not soft, dignified crying. The other kind, the kind that comes from somewhere below your ability to manage it, that bypasses all your emotional regulation and all your professional detachment and all your years of sitting with difficult information and not letting it show. I sat at my desk at 11:30 at night with the condo deed on my screen, and I cried for about 15 minutes. Not only because of what I had found, but because of what it meant about 9 years of my life. Because of the scale of it, not just an affair, not just a hidden account, but an entire parallel existence, constructed piece by piece over 6 years. Funded by money systematically taken from our marriage, including a property with $100,000 of equity that he was planning, at some point, to walk away with. He had been planning for a future in which he left our marriage with assets I didn't know existed. He had been building that future, quietly, while I was sitting across from him at dinner and sleeping next to him at night and believing that what we had was real. That was the thing that made me cry. And then the crying stopped, and I wiped my face, and I looked at the condo deed on my screen. And something shifted in me. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I had everything I needed. Now I needed to decide what to do with it. The planning phase. I gave myself 2 more weeks. Not because I needed more time to find things. I had found everything. I gave myself 2 more weeks because I was not going to walk into a confrontation, a divorce, or a legal proceeding without being completely prepared. I had watched enough fraud cases in my career to know that preparation is everything. The person who prepares wins. The person who acts in anger, who confronts before they are ready, who tips their hand before all their pieces are in place. That person loses ground they can never recover. I was not going to lose ground. In those 2 weeks, I did several things. The attorney. I asked a colleague at work, a woman who had been through a difficult divorce 2 years earlier and had come out of it, in her words, not just intact but ahead, for a recommendation. She gave me a name. Margaret. 58 years old, 25 years of high-conflict divorce and complex asset cases, a reputation in the legal community for being methodical, unflappable, and when the situation called for it, absolutely devastating. I made an appointment. I went to her office with a structured summary document I had prepared, 12 pages, organized by category, with the key figures highlighted and the supporting documentation referenced by tab number in the accompanying binder I had built. Margaret looked at the summary for 4 minutes without speaking. Her expression did not change. Then she turned to the binder and looked at 3 or 4 specific sections. Then she looked at me. "He hid a condo from you," she said. It was not quite a question. "And a car, and a girlfriend, and 6 years of diverted commission income," I said. She studied me for a moment. "What do you do for work?" she asked. "Forensic accountant," I said. "Senior level fraud investigation." There was a brief silence. "I want to be very clear," Margaret said, "that you are the most prepared client I have ever had walk into this office." She took the case. We spent the rest of that first meeting and most of the following week going through every document, every number, every legal implication. Margaret asked sharp questions. I had sharp answers. By the end of our preparation period, She described our evidentiary package as the most comprehensively documented asset concealment case she had filed in her entire career. The financial separation. On Margaret's advice, I quietly opened a new personal bank account at a bank Derek didn't use, moved my personal direct deposit to it, and had my name removed as an authorized user on certain of our joint accounts in a way that was within my rights as a joint account holder, but would limit Derek's ability to move marital assets once the divorce was filed. I also completed a full documented inventory of every marital asset, our house, its estimated value and outstanding mortgage, our joint savings accounts, our individual retirement accounts, our vehicles, our shared investment account. Every number, every account, every asset, valued and documented. I knew exactly what our marital estate contained. Derek did not know that I knew any of this. He had no idea what was coming. The quiet days. Those 2 weeks of preparation were, in some ways, the strangest of my life. I went to work every day. I came home. I cooked dinner. I watched television. I slept next to Derek, or didn't sleep, mostly, lying in the dark running through documentation in my head, and I gave absolutely no indication that anything had changed. I am good at being calm. I have mentioned this. I have never been more grateful for that quality than in those 2 weeks. Derek was normal. He was exactly who he always was, pleasant, a little distracted, occasionally warm, watching his shows, asking about my day, passing the salt. He had no idea. As far as he knew, his parallel life was still safely hidden. As far as he knew, his wife was a woman who had never looked too closely. I thought about that sometimes, lying next to him in the dark. I thought about how little he actually knew me. 9 years, and he had never understood what I was capable of. He had looked at me, the calm, organized, professional woman he had married, and he had seen someone who could be managed. Someone who could be kept comfortable and unaware. Someone who would not look. He did not know me at all. The confrontation. I chose a Sunday morning. He had slept in, he always slept later on Sundays, one of his few genuine indulgences. I got up at 7, showered, dressed, made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and I waited. He came out at 9:30 in his weekend clothes, comfortable and unhurried, the way a man looks when he believes his life is under control. I had placed the binder on the table. It was a 3-inch binder, the same kind I use for client cases at work. Tabbed, color-coded, indexed. On the front in the clear plastic sleeve, a single sheet with the case title. I had written it the same way I write every case title, clean and professional. Inside, the full documentation, organized chronologically, every exhibit numbered, a master summary at the front. Derek sat down across from me with his coffee. He looked at the binder. He looked at me. "What's that?" he said. "Open it," I said. He opened it to the summary page. I watched his face while he read. I had been watching people's faces when they encounter documentation they didn't expect to exist for 15 years, and I watched his the same way, carefully, neutrally, noting what moved and what didn't. He read for about 30 seconds. Then he stopped reading and looked up at me. He said my name. His voice had changed. "I've retained a divorce attorney," I said. "Her name is Margaret. You'll be receiving communication from her office this week. I would strongly recommend retaining your own counsel before that happens rather than after. Can we talk about this? Can you just let me?" "Derek," I kept my voice level. "I am a forensic accountant. I found the account. I found the rent payments. I found the car. I found the transfers to Natalie. I found the LLC. I found the condo." I paused. "I found everything. I documented everything. My attorney has reviewed everything. There is nothing in that binder that is not fully sourced, legally obtained, and professionally verified." He was very still. "I'd like you to leave by this evening," I said. "You have somewhere to go. You've had somewhere to go for 6 years." He looked at me for a long moment. His mouth opened and closed. He looked back down at the binder. Then he said, very quietly, "How long have you known?" 8 months, I said. He absorbed that. I stood up. I picked up my coffee cup. I walked to my home office and closed the door. I heard him sit at the table for a long time. I heard him eventually get up. I heard the sounds of him moving through the house, the bedroom, the bathroom, the closet, the zipper of a bag, the opening and closing of drawers. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard the front door close. I sat in my home office for a few minutes. Then I got up, walked to the kitchen, poured the rest of my cold coffee down the sink, made a fresh cup, and sat at the table, the same table where the binder was still sitting, and I thought, it's done. The part I had to survive is done. The part Margaret had to do was just beginning. The divorce proceedings. Margaret filed the divorce petition on the following Tuesday. It was not a standard filing. Margaret had structured it as a complex asset case with fraud allegations, and she had filed it with the full evidentiary package. Every layer of the investigation documented, every number sourced, every exhibit labeled and cross-referenced. She told me afterward that the clerk had looked at the filing volume and said she hadn't seen anything like it outside a federal case. The petition alleged 4 specific legal claims beyond the standard divorce grounds. First, fraudulent concealment of marital assets. 6 years, $216,000 in diverted commissions, 1 hidden bank account. Second, dissipation of marital assets. 4 years of monthly transfers to a third party, Natalie, totaling approximately $144,000 in marital funds used for the benefit of someone outside the marriage. Third, fraudulent conveyance. The condo, deliberately structured through an LLC with the specific intent of obscuring it from the marital estate. This is a recognized legal claim, and courts take it seriously. Fourth, breach of fiduciary duty. In most states, married spouses owe each other a fiduciary duty, a legal obligation of financial honesty and transparency. Derek had violated this duty comprehensively and deliberately for 6 years. In our state, when a court finds that a spouse has engaged in fraudulent concealment of marital assets, the judge has discretion to award the innocent spouse a disproportionate share of the marital estate as a sanction. This is not automatic. It depends on the evidence and the judge's assessment. But it is a recognized remedy, and it exists specifically for situations like ours. Derek retained an attorney within a week of receiving the filing. His attorney was competent, but was walking into a situation that was, from a legal standpoint, extremely difficult. The evidentiary package was comprehensive and professionally prepared. The financial analysis was expert level, and the specific legal claims, particularly the fraudulent conveyance of the condo, were well documented and hard to counter. His attorney tried. The legal battles. The first argument Derek's attorney made was that the hidden account represented Derek's personal earnings. He argued that commission income belonged to Derek individually, and that he had no legal obligation to deposit it into joint accounts. Margaret had anticipated this argument and had prepared for it extensively. She filed my full forensic reconstruction of 6 years of commission payments, showing the gap between total earned income, reported on our joint tax returns, and the amounts deposited to our joint household account. She filed the record of Derek's repeated representations to me about our household income, documented through emails and text messages I had preserved. And most significantly, She filed the marital financial agreement that Derek and I had signed in the second year of our marriage. A document prepared by a financial planner we had consulted together, in which we had both explicitly agreed to contribute all income above a specified threshold to our joint household account. Derek had signed that document. He had smiled and signed it, and then spent the next 6 years systematically violating it. His attorney reviewed Margaret's response and withdrew the argument. The second argument was about the condo. Derek's attorney contended that the property, held in the name of an LLC, was a separate business asset, not a personal asset, not a marital asset, not subject to division in the divorce. This was the argument I had most specifically prepared to defeat. Margaret filed a memo I had written, formatted as a professional forensic analysis, signed and dated, with my credentials attached, examining the LLC's complete history and structure. The memo documented that the LLC had no income, no operations, no clients, no business purpose of any kind. It had been created, maintained, and used for a single purpose: to hold a residential property that Derek lived in and paid for with money diverted from our marriage. It was a shell, not a business, not a legitimate corporate entity, but a piece of paper designed to create the appearance of separation between Derek and an asset he personally controlled and personally funded. Courts have seen this before. Courts do not like it. Our judge reviewed the memo at the preliminary hearing and turned to Derek's attorney. She said, on the record, which means it was transcribed and it is permanently part of the court file, that the LLC argument was not persuasive. The condo was ruled a marital asset. It was ordered to be sold. The net proceeds after the mortgage payoff, approximately $98,000, were awarded entirely to me as a sanction for the fraudulent concealment. 100%. Derek received nothing from the property he had spent 3 years building equity in. There was a third argument, a last-ditch effort by Derek's attorney to characterize the monthly transfers to Natalie as personal loans that Derek intended to repay, not gifts or support payments, and therefore not subject to the dissipation claim. Margaret responded by noting that there was no documentation of any loan agreement, no repayment schedule, no communications characterizing the transfers as loans, and that the pattern of regular monthly payments over 4 years was entirely consistent with a financial support arrangement. She also noted that regardless of characterization, the funds had originated from marital assets, and their diversion had not been disclosed to the other spouse. That argument also went nowhere. The final numbers. I am going to give you the numbers, all of them, because the numbers are, in a very real sense, the point. Not because money is the most important thing. It isn't. But because Derek's plan, the plan he had been executing for 6 years, was a financial plan. He had constructed a financial architecture designed to benefit him at my expense. He had made financial calculations about what he could take, what he could hide, what he could walk away with. The appropriate response to a financial plan is a financial result. Here is the financial result. Our marital home was sold. The proceeds were split 65% to me and 35% to Derek, adjusted from a standard equal split to reflect the court's findings regarding asset concealment. My share of the home equity, approximately $187,000. Our joint savings and investment accounts were divided 70-30 in my favor, again adjusted from equal to reflect the dissipation findings. My share, approximately $94,000. The condo proceeds, awarded 100% to me, $98,000. Court-ordered restitution for dissipated marital assets. The 4 years of monthly payments to Natalie from our marital funds, $72,000 ordered to be paid to me. Retirement account equalization, adjusted for the concealment findings. An additional $41,000 in my favor over what an equal division would have produced. Legal fees, awarded against Derek as a sanction for the fraudulent concealment and the LLC maneuver. $28,000. Total received by me above what a standard 50-50 division would have produced. Approximately $287,000. Derek walked away from our 9-year marriage with substantially less than half of what we had built together. Because a portion of what we had built together had been built using money he had stolen from the marriage, and the court adjusted accordingly. He also had a judgment against him for the restitution and legal fee amounts, which he did not have liquid funds to pay immediately. He took out a personal loan. He lost the condo. He lost the equity he had been building for 3 years. He lost Natalie, too, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances. The details of the legal proceedings had become available through the court record, and Natalie had apparently not been aware of the full picture, had not known, or had not fully understood, that the comfortable life she had been living was funded by money systematically taken from someone else's marriage. When the full picture became clear, she made her own decisions. I did not engineer that. I want to be clear about that. I had no contact with Natalie, sent her no messages, made no effort to influence her choices. I simply let the legal process run its course and produce a public record. The public record was sufficient. The aftermath, Derek. I want to be honest about what happened to Derek, because I have seen other posts where the person telling the story makes the revenge sound more total than it actually was, and I think dishonesty in either direction serves no one. Derek did not lose his career. Commercial real estate is a relationship business, and in a mid-sized city, relationships have long memories, and the court record of a fraud finding is not a secret. Some of his professional relationships cooled. Some of the industry contacts who had known us as a couple updated their understanding of who he was. One significant client relationship ended. I heard about this indirectly and want to be clear that I had no involvement in it. It was simply the natural consequence of information being available. He kept his job. He rented an apartment. He continued his career in a form that was smaller and more constrained than before. He did not disappear. He did not go to prison. What he did was civil fraud, not criminal, though there are arguments that the LLC maneuver bordered on criminal fraud, and my attorney had considered whether to refer it to the DA. We decided against it. We had what we needed from the civil process. He lost ground. Significant ground. Financial ground, professional ground, social ground, ground I had no part in taking from him beyond the simple act of not protecting the lie that had allowed him to occupy it. He made his choices for 6 years. The consequences of those choices are his to live with. The aftermath, ME. I am genuinely fine, better than fine. I bought a house with a portion of my settlement, a smaller house than the one we had shared, in a neighborhood I chose entirely for myself, based entirely on my own preferences and my own knowledge of the city I have lived in for 15 years. It has a home office with a large window that faces a quiet street, and in the mornings when the light comes in at a certain angle, it is the most peaceful room I have ever worked in. I got a cat. His name is Amortization, which I named because I am who I am, and I call him Morty because 14 pounds of cat deserves a name with some gravity. He is loud, opinionated, and entirely unimpressed with everything, and I find him deeply comforting. I was made partner at my firm 4 months ago. My managing partner said, at the announcement dinner, that my investigative work on my own case had demonstrated a level of methodological precision that reflected well on the firm's standards. I thanked him. He asked if I wanted to share the documentation as a case study for junior staff. I told him I would think about it. I am thinking about it. I have slowly rebuilt the social life that contracted during the divorce. Some friendships shifted. A few people who had been closer to Derek than to me, who found the situation uncomfortable, who drifted away. I hold no bitterness about this. Social realignments after divorces are natural, and I expected it. The friends who stayed completely. They showed up during the hard months, and they continue to show up now, and I am more grateful for them than I have words for. What I think about. I think about the 9 years sometimes. I try to think about them honestly, without either romanticizing them or poisoning them retroactively. There were good years in there, genuinely good ones. Moments that were real, at least on my side. I do not want to decide, from the vantage point of what I know now, that none of it meant anything. I think that kind of revision is its own form of dishonesty. I think about the variable income explanation, about how many times I nodded along to it. I think about the fact that I am a professional fraud investigator who was being financially deceived inside her own home, and I hold that contradiction without fully resolving it. I think the explanation is simple, even if it is uncomfortable. I trusted him. Professional skepticism and personal trust are different tools for different contexts, and I had never thought to apply one in the place of the other. I think about the manila folder in the filing cabinet, the document that had probably been sitting there for weeks, maybe months, in a cabinet I accessed regularly, about how close it came to not being found, about how differently this story ends if I had found the insurance documents without looking further, or if Derek had been slightly more careful. But he wasn't careful enough, and I looked. I think about Margaret telling me I was her favorite client. I have thought about that more than is probably reasonable. There is something in it that I find genuinely moving, not as a validation of the revenge, but as a recognition. A recognition from someone experienced enough to know the difference between a person who is organized and a person who, in the worst circumstances of her life, brought everything she had. I brought everything I had. And it was enough. I don't have a tidy conclusion for you. Life after something like this is not a conclusion. It is a continuation, different in texture and direction from what it was before, but continuous. I wake up in my house with the good light and Morty on the foot of the bed, and I go to work and I come home and I live my life. And the life I am living is more accurately mine than the one I was living before, even when the one before felt complete. That is the best way I know to say it. He thought I wasn't paying attention. He thought 9 years of trust meant I had stopped looking. He forgot, for 9 years, what I do for a living. I found everything, Derek. That is what I do. That is what I will always do. TLDR**. Husband spent 9 years hiding $340,000 from me, skimmed commissions into a secret account, used it to pay rent and a car for his girlfriend, sent her thousands a month for 4 years, and bought a condo through a fake LLC. I am a forensic accountant. I spent 8 months finding every layer of it, documenting all of it, and preparing before I said a single word. I put a 3-inch tabbed evidence binder on the kitchen table on a Sunday morning and told him to leave. The divorce court found fraudulent concealment, dissipation of marital assets, and fraudulent conveyance. I was awarded 100% of the hidden condo, an adjusted split on everything else, restitution and legal fees, approximately $287,000 above a standard split. He took out a personal loan to pay the judgment. I made partner. I have a cat named Amortization. He is 14 pounds and currently sitting on the binder. I am fine.